Hello everyone. We had already learned how to add levels, grids, structural columns and structural walls in last tutorials. Now, in this tutorial, you will add foundations, foundation slabs and structural framing members to the project created in last tutorial. We'll use the following project parameters and specifications for completing this project. The first project parameter is foundations. Pile cap 2, 31 inches by 61 inches by 35 inches and pile cap 4 with 72 inches by 72 inches by 35 inches types. Second one is foundation slab with 12 inches foundation slab type. Third one is beams with concrete rectangular beam of 12 inches by 24 inches type. Fourth one is structural floor with generic 12 inches type, and fifth one is file name to be assigned as C05 Commercial Complex Tute 1. Next, we are going to follow steps that are required to complete this tutorial. Open the C04 Commercial Complex Tute 1.rvt extension project file. Load the isolated foundation families. Create new types for isolated foundations and isolated foundation, add foundation wall, add foundation slab, add beams, modify beams, add structural floor, save the project using the Save As tool, close the project using the Close tool. Before starting this tutorial, we need to open the project file created in the last tutorial. To open that file, we have to go to the File menu, click on it, and choose the project option from the Open menu bar. You can see here the Open dialog box is displayed. In this dialog box, browse to the location wherever you had saved your last file. Here, I am going to browse to the C drive. Select your project file and choose Open button. So, the first section is Loading Isolated Foundation Families. In this section, you will load the isolated foundation families to the current project. To do so, ensure that the Entry Structural Plan view is the current view in the drawing area. Then, choose the Isolated tool from Foundation panel of Structure tab. You can see here the Modify Place Isolated Foundations contextual tab is displayed. In this tab, choose the Load Family from Mode panel. After choosing the Load Family tool, you can see here the Load Family dialog box is displayed. In this dialog box, select the Structural Foundation folder. After that, press and hold the Control key and then click on the Pile Cap 2 pile and Pile Cap 4 pile files displayed in the Structural Foundations folder. The files are highlighted indicating they have been selected. Then choose the Open button. The window closes and the highlighted family files are loaded in the project. The next section is creating new types for the isolated foundation. In this section, you will create two new types of the isolated foundation. For that, in the Properties palette, ensure that the Pile Cap 2 pile 31 inches by 71 inches by 35 inches option is selected from the Type Selector drop-down list. Then, choose the Edit Type button from the Properties palette. The Type Properties dialog box is displayed. After that, choose the Duplicate button in the Type Properties dialog box and the Name dialog box is displayed. In this Name dialog box, enter the name as 31 inches by 61 inches by 35 inches in the Name Edit box. Then, choose the OK button. Name dialog box is closed and the Type Properties dialog box is displayed. In the Type Properties dialog box, select the desired option if not selected by default from the drop-down list in the value field of the Pile Type Structural Foundations parameter. I am going to select the Pile Steel Pipe 16 inches diameter. Then, click in the value field of the Width parameter and replace the existing value with 5 feet 1 inches and press Enter. Then, click in the value field of the Clearance parameter and place the existing value 1 feet and press Enter. Next, choose OK button. You can see here the family is created. After that, choose the Edit Type button from the Properties palette. The Type Properties dialog box is displayed. Then select the Pile Cap 4 Pile option from the Family drop-down list and then select the option from the Type drop-down list if not selected by default as 79 inches by 79 inches by 35 inches. You can see here this option is already selected by default. After that, choose the duplicate button. The name dialog box is displayed. In this name dialog box, enter the name as 72 inches by 72 inches by 35 inches. Next, choose OK button. The name dialog box is closed and the type properties dialog box is displayed. In the type properties dialog box, select the Pile Steel Pile 16 inches diameter option from the drop-down list in the value field of the pile type structural foundations parameter. Then click in the value field corresponding to the width and length parameters and enter 6 feet in each of them. After that, click in the value corresponding to the clearance parameter and enter 1 feet 3 inches to replace the existing value. Then choose OK button. The type properties dialog box is closed. Now we are going to see the next section, that is adding isolated foundations. In this section, you will add the isolated foundation types that you have already created in the project before. To do so, select the option 72 inches by 72 inches by 35 inches Pile Cap 4 Pile from the Type Selector drop-down list. After that, choose the Add Columns tool from the multiple panel of Modify Place Isolated Foundation contextual tab. Then move the cursor and place it over the column located at the intersection of grid C and grid 2. Click when the column is highlighted. A foundation with 4 piles and a pile cap is added at the center of the highlighted column. Then press and hold the Control key and repeat steps to add the foundations to all the internal columns. Release the Control key and choose the Finish button from the multiple panel of Modify Add Structural Column contextual tab. The 4 pile foundation is added to the selected columns. Next, press the Escape. After that, choose the Isolated tool from the Foundation panel of Structure tab to add foundations to the remaining column. Select the option Pile Cap 2 Pile 31 inches by 61 inches by 35 inches from the Type Selector drop-down list. After that, choose the Add Columns tool from the multiple panel of Modify Place Isolated Foundation contextual tab. Next, move the cursor and place it over the column located at the intersection of grid 1 and grid A. The column at the intersection of the grid is highlighted. Then, click on the highlighted column. The foundation is added to the highlighted column. After that, press and hold the Control key and repeat steps to add the foundation type to all the columns that do not have the foundation attached to them. Then, release the Control key and choose the Finish button from the multiple panel of the Modify Place Isolated Foundation Add Structural Columns contextual tab. Then press Escape. Next, choose the Isolated tool from the Foundation panel of the Structure tab again. You can see here the Modify Place Isolated Foundation contextual tab is displayed. In the Properties panel, ensure that the Pile Cap 2 Pile 31 inches by 61 inches by 35 inches option is selected in the Type Selector drop-down list. Now, place the cursor over the column at the intersection of grid C1 and 3.1. Both the grids at the intersection get highlighted. Next, click on the highlighted grids. The selected foundation type is added to the column placed at the intersection of grid C1 and grid 3.1. Then, repeat steps to add the foundation types to the column at the intersection of grid G2 and grid 3.1. After adding the foundation, choose the Modify button from the Select panel of Modify Place Isolated Foundation contextual tab to exit the Isolated tool. Okay, now the next section is adding the foundation wall. In this section, you will add the foundation wall to the structural walls in the project. To do so, choose the Wall tool from the Foundation panel of the Structure tab. You can see here the Modify Place Wall Foundation contextual tab is displayed. After that, in the Properties panel, ensure that the wall foundation bearing footing 36 inch by 12 inch is selected in the Type Selector drop-down list. Then, click on the structural wall located at grid B. The foundation wall of the selected type is added throughout the length of the wall. Now, click on the remaining structural walls in the model. The foundation walls are added to the all structural walls in the project. Then, choose the Modify button from Select panel of the Modify Place Wall Foundation contextual tab. Then, we are going to add beams to the second floor structural plan view of the project in this section. To do so, double-click on the structural floor node under the structural plans head of project browser. You can see here the second floor structural plan view becomes the current view. Now, choose Beam tool from Structure panel of Structure tab. Next, in the Properties palette, select the concrete rectangular beam 12 inches by 24 inches option from the Type Selector drop-down list. Then, in the Options bar, ensure that the Chain checkbox is clear. Now, move the cursor and place it at the intersection of Grid 1 and Grid A. Click at the intersection where the midpoint snap is displayed. After that, move the cursor to the right and place at the center of the column. Then, click at the intersection when the midpoint and the horizontal snap is displayed for the column placed at the intersection of Grid A and Grid 2. Notice that the beam is added between the intersections of grids. Next, click when the midpoint snap is displayed for the column placed at the intersection of Grid 2 and Grid A. Next, click when the midpoint snap is displayed for the column placed at the intersection of Grid 2 and Grid A. Then, move the cursor horizontally right and place it at the center point of the column placed at the intersection point of Grid A and Grid 3. Click at the intersection when the midpoint and horizontal snap is displayed. After that, repeat the procedure to add the remaining beams to the structural plan view. Then choose the Modify button from Select panel of Modify Place Beam contextual tab. In the next section, you are going to select all the instances of the beam in the project view and modify their instance properties. For that, click on the beam placed at Grid A between Grid 1 and Grid 2. Then right-click. A shortcut menu is displayed. After that, choose the Visible in View option under the Select All Instances drop-down from the shortcut menu. All beams in your project view are selected. Now press Shift key and then select the beam created on Grid 4, 5, B and G1. After that, press Shift key and then select beams created on Grid B, G1, 4 and 5. These beams are removed from the selection. Then, in the Properties palette, specify the instance parameter as -1 feet in the start level offset and -1 feet in the end level offset. Next, choose the Apply in the Properties palette and press Escape. Then the next section is adding a structural floor. In this section, you will add a structural floor to the project in the second floor structural plan view. To do so, ensure that the second floor subnode under the structural plans head node is highlighted in the project browser. Then, invoke the floor structural tool under the floor drop-down from the structure panel of structure tab. You can see here the Modify Create Floor Boundary contextual tab is displayed. Then, in the Properties palette, select Generic 12 inches option from the Type Selector drop-down list. After that, in the Modify Create Floor Boundary contextual tab, ensure that the boundary line option is chosen in the Draw panel. Then, choose the Line tool from the list box displayed right next to the Boundary Line tool. In the Options bar, ensure that the Chain checkbox is selected and then in the Offset Edit box, replace the default value as 1 feet. Then move the cursor and place it at the intersection of grid A and grid 1 and click when the endpoint snap is displayed. Then move the cursor to a right and place it at the intersection of grid A and grid 3 and click when the endpoint and horizontal snap is displayed. Next, click on the other grid intersections such as grid C1 and grid 3, grid C1 and grid 3.1, grid D and grid 3.1, grid D and grid 4. Next, click on the other grid intersections to create floor. After creating a boundary, choose the Modify tool from the Select panel to exit the current tool. Then choose the Trim Extend to Corner tool from the Modify panel and then select the recently created line and the horizontal line starting from the grid 1. Next, choose the Finish Edit Mode button from the Mode panel of the Modify Create Floor Boundary Contextual tab and then choose the Modify button from Select panel of the Modify Floor Contextual tab to complete the floor creation. In the last section, we are going to save the project using Save As tool. To do so, go to the file and click on it. Then select the project option from Save As menu bar. You can see here the Save As dialog box is displayed. In this dialog box, browse through the location wherever you want to save your project file. Create a subfolder with the name of C05 RST 2024 Tute. Open that folder and enter the file name as C05 Commercial Complex Tute 1 and then press Save button. The Save As dialog box closes and the project file is saved. After that, close the project by using Close tool.
Finally, now you know how to load the isolated foundation families, create new types for isolated foundations, add isolated foundation, foundation wall and foundation slab, then add beams and modify beams, and add structural floor. Thanks for watching this tutorial.